Hi there, Dean Heskin, President and CEO of Swiss America Trading. Thank you for tuning into our podcast, The Secret War on Cash. We're discussing some of the changing things that are taking place in our financial markets and our economy. And there has been no shortage of that over the course of the last several months to few years now. And we've been taking a look in particular at banks and our banking system. I have with me my frequent co-host, Chris Agelastos. Good morning, Chris. How are you today?
Good morning. Doing well, thank you.
Very good. We are going to talk about a very familiar topic, something we've covered quite often, and that's banks. Banking in America today has taken on a whole new, what's the word I'm looking for? We'll say meaning to some extent, but issues, challenges, dynamic. There's been just a lot of different little nuances that we as people who do bank, or people who I guess we're consumers to the banks, we've had to be very adaptive, and we've had to kind of brave or weather through the storm, so to speak. Specifically, let's put up the first article here. This highlights a gal by the name of Cindy Little. And as you see on the article there, JP Morgan Chase refuses to reimburse $7,900 that was drained from her account in a brutal hack attack, is what they're calling it. Now, as I read through this article, as I know you did as well, Chris, she was initially hacked for $1,000. And upon the initial hack, she contacted the bank and they immediately reimbursed her the $1,000. Then she was hacked again a little while later, and she immediately contacted the bank and told them what was happening. She asked them to please freeze the account or stop it. They refused to do so. And if I'm understanding correctly, then over the course of 3 days, the hacks continued. And that's where we get to this figure of, I believe, $7,900.
Yeah.
What's interesting about it is that the bank's position, they're saying that they believe she's at fault and or she is actually in on this fraud, or she's maybe perhaps doing it to her benefit.
Yeah.
So what I find interesting about that, however, is that the reason we're likely talking about this story, and we can read it today, KPRC, a television station 2, number 2 that is, a gentleman by the name of, I think it's Bill Spencer. He has kind of brought this to the light, and he's kind of highlighting what took place. And when I saw, because, look, in today's day and age, it's not uncommon that people will figure out creative ways to commit fraud.
Yeah.
If she were doing this, now she's got television networks involved, et cetera. If she were guilty, or if that was her plan, I would have to believe at this point she'd be like, okay, we better pump the brakes and just let this go. Right. But she's not doing that, which to me would suggest there's probably some validity to this. Yeah. I mean, from your perspective, Chris, like, do you think that moving ahead, and I know we've talked about several banks that have gone through this, what kind of recourse does she have? And I mean, is this something that, is there anything a consumer can do to stop it or prevent it from happening, or protect ourselves even better?
I mean, that's what I'm wondering for myself. I mean, this story has me concerned, I mean, she's using a payment service called Zelle, which I think all the major banks use to be able to, pay people. I pay my pest control guy through Zelle, his small business. A lot of small businesses use it. And, it has me wondering, okay, what if somebody gets access to my account and the same thing happens here? It sounds like they kind of gave her the benefit of the doubt, I guess, the first time and reimbursed that $1,000. But they're putting up a fight with the second instance of $8,000 or just about. And keep in mind, it did mention in there too, she filed a police report reporting the fraud and contacted the FBI and the FTC. So, to your point, I mean, could she be in on it? I suppose, but it doesn't seem likely that if you were committing a fraud that you would actually contact the authorities on yourself to report it. So it does seem at this point that it's just the bank not wanting to pay. And in thinking about it, I remember years ago, I used to use a credit card for a lot of online transactions because you had more protections from the credit card companies than you did from the banks. And over the years, I feel like in my mind, the bank has just kind of almost become synonymous with a credit card. My debit card, I see it as a credit card because it looks just like my regular credit card. And so I use my checking account and debit transactions and Zelle payment a lot more than I used to. And now I realize that the banks really give us a lot less in terms of protection than the credit card companies do. Credit card companies are really quick when you have trouble to, freeze the account, issue you a new card right away. Their investigations are usually pretty quick. You're not responsible for any of the fraudulent charges. So I guess to answer your question, I'm a little concerned about the future, and I think I need to reevaluate the banking that I do, and maybe change all of my passwords, even though I don't know that they've been compromised. Maybe change them regularly and use my credit card more, and then pay it off from my checking account.
Yeah, well, and I think the challenge here, especially as you referenced, Zelle, a third-party service that very very common people use for payments. Even if you're doing like a fundraising effort,
Right.
paying off a person if you pitch in on a gift or something to that effect. So there's really no way you can absolutely control that because we are all at the mercy of the system.
Yeah.
The thing that I personally found a little, I don't know, somewhat troubling about this is, again, if I'm reading this correctly, it does sound like over the course of 3 days, she had reached out to them multiple times to try and get it to stop. And at what point, does the banks, and it wasn't just a singular withdrawal, it was several of them that happened over the course of that 3-day period. At what point can your bank that you are using, you trust them to keep your money safe, to use their services, and you're paying for those services, by the way, these days. In the old days, it was things you didn't have to pay for.
Right.
But at what point does the bank step in and just say, okay, you know what? Let's freeze this account that the customer is asking us to do because they say something improper is happening, and yet they do not do it.
Yeah, now, it seems crazy.
It's beyond crazy. Then, ironically, as we skip or move to the next article here, and we're not picking on J.P. Morgan Chase, full disclosure, and this deals more, the second article, with their it says banking practices, but kind of their brokerage / banking practices.
Yeah.
Where they were just ordered where they were issued a cease and desist order, which was that was given over unsafe or unsound banking practices. And we're fined $348 million. That's a lot of money. $348 million. Now, as you get into the article, you'll see these practices that they have been employing, let's call it, it's been taking place from 2014 to 2023. That's the period in question here. So that's 9 years. So the first thing would be, as I read this, as a consumer, utilizing, let's say, J.P. Morgan in this case, why did it take 9 years for this to come to light? You know what I'm saying? Like, I guess what I mean is we want to know that there's some reasonable expectation or some confidence and assurance that we can have that, the people who are managing our money, there are entities out there that oversee them and make sure everything's good. This is a 9-year period. Now, I don't know where this $348 million is going. I don't. It doesn't sound like that's going. It's a penalty. It's not something going to customers who were basically experiencing these unsafe or unsound banking practices. And to put this in even more perspective, you look at the end of the article, as I know you have, Chris, just in profits alone last year, J.P. Morgan made $49 billion.
It's a lot.
In 2023, $49 billion. So now When you look at a 9-year period, 348 million suggests to me that's a little more than a slap on the wrist. They did something wrong over 9 years. But with 1 year's profitability at a time, incidentally, where banks have been really kind of on the ropes for a lot of reasons, things are taking place in the economy, for them to still be able to generate 49 billion in profit, that is not, it doesn't even constitute, it's not a slap on the wrist. It's barely even a dirty look, if that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, Chris, in the world of banking, I know with what you do in the metals business, you know, you're kind of into the whole financial realm of dealing with banks and so on and so forth. It seems like it's become a whole lot less personal, a whole lot more sterile, the banking environment, and there's just not much regard for customers anymore. Am I seeing this improperly or incorrectly?
No, I mean they're in business to make themselves and their shareholders money. You know, mostly themselves. They are the shareholders, and
I have no problem with that. That's
right.
That's capitalism at its best. But not to
Yeah.
interrupt you.
Yeah, but again, who's, you know, are they using improper means? You know, it says at the end of the article there that since the year 2000, so what, about 24 years now, they've paid about 40 billion in fines. Okay, so I mean that's a lot of money, but it isn't even what they made in income profits last year. So it really is a slap on the wrist. It almost seems like kind of a payoff. Like, hey, you know, we'll throw 300-400 million at you periodically to fine us, and you know, just do it few enough and far between so that we can still make money in the meantime. And I hate to be a cynic or skeptical about it, but the banks are starting to remind me of like the pharmaceutical industry. You know, they release a drug, they make billions and billions of dollars for 5 or 10 years. And then a study comes out that finds out it's been killing people, and they pay a small percentage of fines and pull the product. You know, if the penalty is nowhere near the massive gains and profits that these companies can make, what is to keep them from continuing that bad behavior? I mean, I guess we'd like to think that they want to do the right thing. But again, it's not an individual person. This is an entity. And I'm not sure that the entity has a conscience. And, you know, they may not be going to church on Sunday. You know, and so I feel a little just like it's lawlessness, you know, kind of like the Wild West. They can do what they want. They have the big pockets. They pay some fines and laugh all the way to the bank. And it's just sickening.
Yeah, and you know, I mentioned a moment ago, I haven't seen the actual breakdown. I would love to know, where did this $348 million figure even come from? Like, what exactly is that based on? Is it per infraction? And if so, I mean, good Lord, how many infractions are we talking about? Is it a percentage? I can't imagine it's a percentage of business with a $49 billion in profits last year alone.
Yeah.
300 million doesn't even represent, what is that? Not even 10%. So, I mean, you know, it's the banking, as we've referred to it as, the banking crisis really kind of continues. And it's not just a single level problem, meaning it's not just like there was a problem in the brokerage service. Yes, you do have people whose funds have been stolen. We've seen accounts frozen. We have seen inexplicable removal of funds by the bank from clients' accounts. And then this doesn't even get into like the problems they're running into with bad loans and things of that nature. So, you know, this is just a big reason for those of you tuning in why financial diversification, especially in today's day and age, is imperative. We need banks. We have to have them in order to pay our bills, to live, to survive. Have your money in the bank, have some money in your retirement accounts, albeit stocks, bonds, mutual funds. Put some physical gold in your retirement account. Put some physical gold, or silver in your just normal investment accounts. But being diversified, given the scope of what's going on out there in today's economy, I think is critical. So if you haven't already, tune into our podcast, subscribe to it. where you can stay on top of this and other issues that continue to develop here in our financial markets, in our economy. If you haven't contacted our office, you see the toll-free number there in your description, as well as our website. Visit us online or give us a call. We'd be happy to get you out information to keep you up to speed with this and many of the other changes out there. Until next time, thanks for tuning in. Chris, thanks for being here, and we'll look forward to doing it again real soon.
Thank you.